Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Welcome back to the Think Small podcast. My guest today is Greg Cathcart from NNIT Inc. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that.
Yeah, really looking forward to today's conversation. I think it falls within my wheelhouse, right? Because as an employee benefits broker, I deal with, sort of the pharmaceutical healthcare side of the world. So your business also being sort of tied to that, or certainly being tied to that, naturally our conversation kind of I feel like in our prep call, we got into the weeds a bit, but why don't we start by kind of talking about what NNIT does, your relationship with Novo Nordisk, and where you're at in the marketplace.
Sounds good. NNIT is a Danish headquartered strategic consulting firm. We spun out of Novo Nordisk about 25 years ago. And today, Novo Nordisk still owns a fair amount of the shares in our company. We're publicly traded on the Danish stock exchange. We got about 2,000 people globally. 99% of our work is supporting the pharmaceutical industry in a world of strategic consulting around areas like regulatory, clinical, quality, supply chain, and the likes. And when I say the pharmaceutical supply chain, it means manufacturers of drugs, wholesalers of drugs, buyers of drugs, customers like Walmart. For us, as a good example, people don't think Walmart and pharmaceuticals, but in every Walmart, you got a pharmacy in there, right? CVS pharmacy, think of them as more of a pharmacy, as well as all the hospitals and the payers and the providers that ultimately reimburse for these products down to the patient level. So that's kind of the area that our focus is, and been doing this. We NNIT have been in this area about 25 years, I think, total.
It sounds like a really broad core competency, right? And I'm wondering about what you've seen in the pharmaceutical industry as far as change. In healthcare, we can look at 3 years and say, oh, we've seen a massive change in the last 3 years. You could do it on 5 years and 10 years, but being that you've been in the business so long, what would you say are some of the key changes that have gone around pharmaceutical industry in the last few years? And it seems like we're at the precipice of a bell curve, right? Like things have kind of ramped up significantly in spend and in the market capitalization, right? So like all the money that's in pharmaceuticals, where do you see sort of trend going?
Yeah, and the easiest one is you talk about GLP-1s in the last couple of years, right? But those GLP-1 products have been in market for multiple years for different therapeutic classes. I think that's good. And the reason that's good, those leaders in that space, Novo Nordisk is one of them, Lilly, of course, is the other in that space. They're using their funds and profits from those sales of those products to also go out and develop new therapies. And they're developing both internally and through acquisitions. When I was younger in this industry, we had big pharma, and they pretty much developed everything and promoted it, and it was all blockbuster type drugs. You probably know those terms, right? Today, there's about 650 companies globally that have product in clinical phases, and these are 650 companies that never launched a drug before. We call them first-time launch customers, right? Those are oncology-based products, terrible diseases of small populations of patients. It's incredible. It's cool. We love working with those folks because it helps, right, patient population. Couldn't do that in the past because it was too expensive for these companies to launch or try to launch these drugs. But there's better funding for it today. They're getting acquired by some of the big guys that help them continue those journeys. So that's really the big trend. You're seeing disease. We have a company right now that's got 16 patients in a clinical trial. That's it, 16, because they can't find more right now with this rare disease. And it's either death by the time you're 3 or completely healed because it's a gene therapy. These kids are just born without a gene.
Yeah.
Right. So they give them a gene and 2 years of age, and now they're running around with mom and dad and playing ball in the house. It's crazy.
That's pretty incredible to be like, I don't know, front line on some of this, right? To have your like finger on the pulse with some of the more cutting edge of pharmaceutical and drug manufacturing, drug development.
It is, and it's a little heartwarming too, right? Because when you talk to these customers of ours, and then you see the patients and what they go through, and the families, right? Absolutely helps. Makes you feel good. You want to help them get stuff across the line. You get approved.
Yeah. I think that was one of the big things that like drew me to the industry as well. Was I started my career as a salesperson in very transactional and commoditized, sales, and then ultimately found my way towards employee benefits. And I realized at one point we're at an open enrollment meeting, and people were looking around, significantly concerned about how the changes were going to impact, their health, their access to care. And then you kind of felt this like sigh of relief, like, oh, like this is a really good plan. And then somebody asked me, oh, my son needs shoulder surgery. Like, how much is it going to cost me?
Yep.
And I realized like this was a completely different approach, because you're talking about like the health and welfare of your, not only your client, but their employees, their kids, that sort of thing. Right. So, yeah.
Now, the challenge to these special drugs is cost, right? It costs a lot of money to develop them, and they're expensive when they get sold and when they get approved and ultimately get sold. But there's vehicles out there between insurance companies, private funding, government funding, right, that offsets a fair amount of that cost, but there's still a burden on a family member if they've got an insurance company that they're going to hit their deductible pretty simply with one therapy that costs $2 million. They only need to take it once. That's the cool thing about it, but it's extremely expensive, right?
Sure.
So to your point, it's going to be costly for that family because of deductibles and things that they have on their insurance, but it's expensive in the insurance industry, government industry who's paying for some of this stuff. But the positive effect, $2 million shot today for a 2-year-old probably saves all of us $10 million in cost for that child if they live to be 30 or 40.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right?
So, I mean, we talked a little bit about sort of the M&A side of things. I'm curious how you help and facilitate with that portion of it. So you're meeting these companies that are in phase 2 trials and then helping them almost like facilitate that phase 3. They're closing phase 2. Where are you at in the process?
Yep. So basically, we typically meet them around phase 2. You're exactly correct, and help them plan, strategize, and implement what they need to do from a phase 3 to ultimately get the product submitted, get it approved, get it launched. Right. So think about that. You might have a company with 30 employees in the clinical phase, but all of a sudden they're going to get a drug approved and they need 200 sales reps in 3 months. Right. So how do they plan for that? How do they execute on that? How do they pick partners that can help them in a commercial world, which is different than partners that helps them in a clinical world? So all that type of strategy, that is really what we do with these first-time launch type companies. And we typically work with them because this cycle is multi-years, right? From phase 2, 3 to approval, typically 3 to 5 years. Because, you don't do the 5-year plan today, you do it over time, right? So that's kind of where we come at it and support them. The other side of it is we help support them if they want to be acquired. Almost one of our first questions: what's your future? Do you want to launch this drug? Go public, private, whatever, from a funding point of view? Here's your goal: to get the product through a certain level in clinical and ultimately sell the company to one Merck, J&J, Lilly, or somebody. Most of the time they have a plan, and that'll drive how we help them, right? And timing of things.
Yeah. It's been a while since I met with, at one point we had a string of guests that were in the therapeutics and drug development, and one was making a retina therapy, and the administering method kind of freaked me out because it was basically a shot in the eye. I was like, doesn't sound fun. But he was saying that it's a 2-year double-blind study, and then basically you have to wait 2 years to even kind of figure out whether or not you were successful. And then from a timing perspective, he started the company 6 years ago. They're finally at sort of the tail end of phase 2. And like the time commitment just to get something that may or may not ultimately make it to market. Is there any insight you can provide the listeners on success rate on companies? Because I think by and large, the majority of drugs don't make it to market. The majority of stuff kind of, fails out, right?
Yes and no. And what I mean by that, traditionally, that was the answer. But a lot of these therapies today, since they're gene and cell-based therapies, it's pretty simple. You're missing a gene that causes whatever, maybe blindness. Was this Spark Therapeutics you're talking about by chance?
I don't know. I'll have to.
Spark's drug was a gene defect that caused blindness in children. You give them this gene product and they can see. Now, so just because they know these patients are missing a gene, they got to figure out how to reproduce that gene and make it a drug. It's still multi-years of work, but the success rates on some of these are a lot better than they used to. Timing still takes time because FDA is going to ensure you do all the studying, right? They don't want to start sticking products in people and having people die because of side effects and things like that. So you still have to go through the process. But we've seen the success rate. We've probably helped over 250 companies in the last 18 months, 24 months, prepare and launch their assets, we call them, and probably less than 10 of them have failed. And they don't fail 100%. The results in clinicals are okay, so that's start a new study. It pushes them back typically a year or two, maybe 2 or 3. But so the numbers are way higher than they used to be. But
That's pretty incredible.
well, but these patient populations are so narrow with a very specific issue that they have better success because of that.
Mm.
Half their challenges is finding patients, right? How do you educate doctors on a certain type of disease out in Omaha or out in Spokane, Washington, right? Big hospitals in the big cities of Washington and Philadelphia, New York, and Boston now, they have all the specialty doctors for all these different areas. But when you talk about the rest of just this country, not even the rest of the world, how does a mom walk in with a family doctor in Omaha, like I said, and find out that her kid has X?
Right.
Those docs don't know. Not aware of these types of things.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if there's an expectation, right, that they would, right? Because
no, there's no expectation. That's the manufacturer's job too. They know that as part of their once the products get an approval, education, right? They can't
right.
educate on these products in clinical phases because it's not allowed because there's no success yet. But once they get the approval from the FDA and the PDUFA date, then they start going into medical affairs 101, which is educating doctors through all different vehicles these days. What's good about that? They're using media like you and I are talking on, not paper in the mail or some sales rep swinging by your office and dropping off a brochure. Those days
Sure.
are now all digital, which gets the information out quicker.
That's great. Good. That's good to hear. One of the questions that comes into my mind, so you said 240 clients over the last 2 years, is that what you said?
240, about 10 a month, exactly, in the phase, anywhere from phase 2 all the way through approval.
That's pretty incredible from a like numbers perspective. Any insight onto like pipeline? I'm just curious about how.
Yeah. No. We run an organization called FTLA, First Time Launch Alliance. It's a global group that does monthly education sessions and quarterly in-person sessions. We track about 650 companies globally that fit in that phase 2, phase 3 bucket, right? Because those are the ones that are ultimately trying to launch their first asset and bring them together. They want to come together. When we put this together 2 years ago, the instant response of people signing up, because it's nothing, no cost to them, right? We run it and we have sponsors that pay for it. So we can give this content because they're all trying to learn. They're trying to learn what you did when you launched your drug a year before that they did, right? They want to make sure they are prepared as best as possible. Our consulting arm within the company at NNIT helps them prepare for that as well. So we help them build their strategies on how to do it, when to do it, right? Over a life cycle of multi-years, the infrastructure they need from systems points of view and process points of view, right? These are typically companies with 30 to 50 employees in research and clinical, and now they're going to become 400 or 500 person companies with sales and marketing and market access and, all these other regulatory groups for medical affairs like I just talked about. They can't hire them too early, but they can't hire them too late either. So it's kind of a whole roadmap of how do you get from A to Z.
Yeah, I actually had a guest on the podcast not too long ago that was in government contracting, went from 20 employees, got his first contract, and then overnight basically had to hire 150 employees.
Yeah. Well, and there's companies out there that'll do that as contractors as well. So you got to hire sales reps in the oncology space, just say it. There's a lot of part-time former sales reps that are working more part-time, and they'll come support your launch for the first 6 months full-time because they don't want to work 12 months a year. They want to work 6 months a year. So you can bring companies in like that to help you get out of the gate quicker while backfilling these temporary employees with full-time employees. Or you can use temporaries forever, right? Or a balance of both, right? So that's just a little snippet on how we help them prepare for what they're going to do. There's so many other pieces along the way that they have to look at.
Cool. My mind goes back to the relationship with Novo Nordisk and the fact that they sort of own 30%. Would you say that the majority of your clients kind of end up, if they go into an M&A, is it a pipeline to Novo, or is it you kind of go out and help them consult on all their options for an M&A perspective?
So Novo, we do about 10% of our business, 9% of our business globally for Novo Nordisk.
Oh, wow.
But that's just supporting Novo Nordisk sites generally for lots of different reasons. But we are pretty much separated from a day-to-day, world. They don't come to us and say do specific things, and we're both owned by the same parent company called Novo Holdings.
Got it.
So in the M&A space, Novo's buying companies, make no mistake about it, but there's Merck, Lilly, Sanofi, and a few others. Everyone's buying them. But those three, because they have such big blockbuster drugs coming off patent here in the next 3 to 5 years, Merck gets Keytruda, they're a $35 billion drug. One drug going to disappear in 2029 or 2030. So Merck has purchased 30 companies this year alone. And those 30 companies aren't going to all be $30 billion revenue companies. Maybe 20 of them don't even make it, to your point, or 10 of them don't make it.
Right.
And the other 20 become $1 billion in sales or $2 billion in sales. They're making it up in volume versus one big drug. Sanofi's got the same issue. I'm sure you read just yesterday, Monday, AstraZeneca and Bristol Myers potentially merging.
That's news to me, but
no, hit the press on Monday. $400 billion valuation because both have such big patent cliffs coming in the next 5 to 7 years. They think they could do a lot better as a bigger company by reducing such a cost out of two companies, right? While those patent cliffs hit them, and then use those funds to go out and buy additional new companies. So that purchase of these first-time launch companies has become a lot of big pharma's R&D spend. Instead of doing stuff internally, they're going out and buying these companies that are already into the middle of a phase 2, phase 3 trial. Right.
Do you think that that's part of the, the cost driver then at that point, right? Because they're spending so much to acquire these companies that they're taking more risk on companies instead of internalizing their own R&D. I mean, I understand the concept of let's let all of the stuff that doesn't work trickle out. Let's pick up companies after they close phase 2 where they can improve efficacy and safety. And then now it's less of a risk because you're not doing your own R&D, but at the same token, you're putting up all this capital to buy these companies.
I think it's probably a balance. That they still do some R&D, don't get me wrong, but they're doing more acquisition stuff. They're probably paying a higher price at the end when they buy somebody versus a price so just say if they bought Avidity, just got bought 6 months ago for $10 billion. Karuna, the Bristol Myers 6 months before that for $13 billion. These companies are in phase 3. They may have spent $5 billion or $2 to $3 billion to get to phase 3, right?
Yeah.
So Bristol didn't spend that $3 to $5 billion to get it to phase 3, but they did spend 13 to grab it in late phase 3 with a pipeline of not just the first asset but multiple assets. It's a big number. It's crazy numbers, but it's do you pay now or you pay the pauper later? It's one of those types of things, right? So we see more and more of it just buying it later. And you said it just 2 seconds ago. After they're through a certain phase with a lot more predictable outcome, not 100% predictable, but much better outcome versus, trying to launch or develop products themselves.
Yeah. It's like I can just drop in on a company that's spent the last 6 years proving their salt, right? And then, or I can internalize an R&D, and like you said, they're probably doing their own. Certainly doing their own R&D, right? But that's a 10-year process, right? So if you're going to go develop your own drug or just kind of pick up,
Well, and the economics, to your point, are probably the same over a 15-year period, right? Because that's what they're looking at, right? They're looking at buying somebody halfway through a 20-year process, anywhere from 8 to 10 years in phase 3,
right?
Versus starting that themselves all the way back there. Hiring all those people. Just think about the HR piece of this. Not only do I have to hire people, I have to have people with certain skill sets that my team might not have. I got to go find them. It's going to take me months to negotiate, hire them, and bring them in. It take a year and a half just to put the team together.
Sure.
Right?
My mind goes to their ability to scale that, though, right? I mean, you said Merck bought 10 companies, but Lilly's buying companies all the time, right? So instead of internalizing their own R&D and developing drugs, like novel drugs, right? They're going in and they could say, hey, all right, we're going to pick up, 20 companies next year. And isn't that sort of part of that runaway that these companies are scaling at a much higher, faster rate than they ever were before because they can basically conquer the market. They can buy up all these companies and throw a wider net, if you will.
Yep, and they have put investment into their M&A activities, not to go buy them. They've always had BD teams to go out and look and acquire and so on and so forth. But they got a lot bigger M&A teams to integrate them.
Yeah.
Right, integrate them from all different areas. I think you and I said earlier today, just HR functions, culture. You got 10 companies do it 10 different ways, and Lilly does it their way. how do you blend that together without pissing off all the folks that you're trying to bring into this new culture, right? So you got to take a little bit of each, and it's an art and a science to do that right. So they put a lot of emphasis in their M&A integration teams, and it goes from technology integration, HR integration, right? All the different areas that you're bringing these companies into. Who's going to work for who? Just those little things. Who's going to be the new chief medical officer? You see a lot of times the guys that are getting acquired because their portfolio of products is the future, say for Bristol Myers, they might be getting the top job in the chief medical seat just because the Bristol portfolio is a lot lighter now and coming off patent and things like that. I'm just making an example up. I don't know who Bristol's chief medical officer is, but we see those types of changes. That's not easy, but it's, that's where they're spending. They're trying to make sure these acquisitions are, bought in the right manner to be successful. Because if not, they just spend 10 billion, 13 billion, 2 billion, whatever the number is, and it ends up being wasted spend.
Do you mind if I ask you where you get the latest news on things like this? Like what are you checking when you're having your coffee in the morning to see updates on things like this? Because for me, it's exciting. And you've already brought to me like 3 or 4 different things that I had really no idea about. So I'd love to kind of get on your reading list. What sites are you checking?
So I don't check any sites. I talk to my friend Fred, which is the internal AI group solution that we built for the company and for our customers. But most of it's coming from things like Fierce Pharma, because I basically want to look at certain things. Because if I get a Fierce Pharma, which I get in my email every single day, update, at least one a day, sometimes 2, there's no way I could read them all because there's content in there that's not important to me and my company and my personal. So I've got filtered out using my AI capabilities from Fred. And in the company, our sales team gets certain stuff because they want to find out if the customer's advanced an asset, because now all of a sudden they might need our support, right? So we set this up, 2 years ago, and funneling multiple different areas. Some of it's even things like Reuters, because that's financial information on who's buying, who had a good quarter, right? And that kind of stuff, because those companies, again, get a grow and drive more profit. They're also starting to invest in it. So that's kind of the area. Pink sheets from the FDA is another one. The FDA it's for free. You can go on the FDA website and sign up for the pink sheets. The pink sheets is anytime something positive and or negative happens to a drug while going through approvals or already approved, and maybe there's a recall or maybe there's a side effect update because whatever, right? More patients taking the product and finding issues like that, because those become quality issues. And do they have to reformulate the drug potentially, or do they have to put some new safety procedures in to make sure, these patients aren't having these side effects? All those things are important to us, because then we take that data back to our customers and say, hey, we heard about your issue. We've seen that before in 5 other customers of ours. Let us help you figure out how to fix this problem so going forward, you don't have these issues. Or somebody just had a great clinical outreach, or not outreach, but a great clinical result in a phase 2, and all of a sudden they got orphan designation, right, and fast track approval. So now they're not going to be approved in 3 years. That might become 18 months, because again, these drugs are for such devastating diseases, for such small patient populations. I hate to say this nasty or mean, it's better than the outcome of what would happen if the disease grew in them, right? Rett syndrome is an example. We're doing this one right now with a client of ours. These kids at 2 years of age are in a wheelchair, emotionally and physically all disfigured, and they might live to be 30 years of age, right? In their clinical, they got 16 patients in clinical, and they had to do 1 a month. So now they just did the 16th in June. So the first one started in January of 25. Would that be right? Something like that. That first kid, and they're only girls. For some reason, boys aren't born with this syndrome. It's only girls because of the old XY chromosome we learned about way back in 3rd grade. And these kids now are 16 months in, and they're running around playing ball in the house at 2.5, 3 years of age, right? Just amazing.
Yeah.
So, but finding those patients is also a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Talked about that. So, but it's exciting. I love it. I love talking to these people when they start talking about these diseases, not because I do feel for the patient, but I do more emotionally feel for it, right? Not the science side of it, it's the patient side of it.
It's the outcome, yeah. That's really cool. Kind of brings me to sort of my capstone question around, potentially what's slowing you down, right? So is there anything in your mind that like you just wish that you could be more efficient, or that's slowing you down from an operation perspective?
Yeah, in our world, our customers get slowed down from oversight and regulation, but I understand why, right? I'm sure you've read about the pharmaceutical company, I forget the name of it, that used AI to submit their NDA filing to the FDA, and no human ever interacted with it. They let AI do it all. It's like, come on, guys, you have to have some common sense. But oversight's important, and that does slow down some of these processes. But those that do it better, those that follow the way the FDA wants to see things, they get accelerated, and that's important too. So for us, that helps our business. If we get them closer to a launch or even to a launch, it's going to accelerate our business because they're going to need us for a lot of areas of support. But right now, I mean, our market globally, especially in the US, what's been happening from a political point of view, right? President Trump wants these companies to build more and more factories in this country. So we're getting a lot of investment back into the US from offshore. And that investment's good investment because these are high paying jobs and things like that, right? And in some parts of this country, generally North Carolina, places like that. But that's a good thing. People are investing in this industry. They almost always invest versus other industries, the car industry. If we have a downturn in the economy, nobody buys a car, and all of a sudden Ford and GM and everybody else is taking it on. Airlines aren't flying because of COVID. Airline stocks go from 50 to 2, right?
Yeah.
Gas price goes up because of the war in Iran. I mean, it's almost always connected to something politically around the world that causes these things.
Sure.
Drugs continue to get better and better every year because we live longer every year too.
Right. Yeah, we actually see that in like when we look back at claims data from 2020 and 2021, during the pandemic, active claims around seeing your physician went down because people weren't going out to the doctor.
Yep.
But drugs stayed consistent because you still need to take your heart medication.
Yep. Yeah. Especially long-term disease control type stuff, high blood pressure, cholesterol, blah 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 blah. But again, the flip side of that, what you're seeing now is those therapies dropping from a usage point of view because people are getting on the GLP-1s. So now you drop 30 pounds, 50 pounds, or whatever the number is. All of a sudden your blood pressure goes down 10%. All of a sudden you don't need to be on a blood pressure medication. Well, you multiply that by millions and millions of patients on these products. And now with the pills coming out, right, you're going to get even a bigger patient population. So, but it's expensive too, right? It's expensive. The average person to be able to go pay, I don't know, $1,000 a month or whatever, $700 or $800, depends on your insurance company, right? Versus the pill's a lot more manageable from a price point, and it'll be a lot more widespread from a patient usage point of view. It'll take time. Next 2 years, you'll see a lot of people move towards the pill versus the shot.
I think it's an exciting time about health in the United States. I think that we look at obesity rates dropping, GLP-1 usage increasing, so people are getting healthier, getting off of some of their chronic disease maintenance or chronic medications. And then when we look at even like alcohol consumption is at an all-time low. So from a health perspective, I think I'm very optimistic about the near-term future or even mid-term future for what that means for the overall population health of the United States. I think like for a long time it was like, and I think people are waking up from the diet perspective as well. I think, they're not eating as much junk food as we used to, right? So, but I think that we were the sort of the butt of the end of the joke around health globally. And I think that might be turning around. I think we're looking at a healthier United States in the near future.
Well, and the youngsters, as I call them, I got a 32-year-old, 30-year-old, and a 23-year-old. They're also way more highly educated about health and the need to be healthy, and they want to look good too. Don't get me wrong, right? So even my 23-year-old, she's in grad school and likes to go out and have some drinks, but there's no beer going in that body anymore. It's the seltzer with the little vodka in it, right? So they still drink a little bit, but the content of alcohol that they're doing in a night is half of probably what kids of my generation do, maybe even a third of what kids of my generation. And we tended to drink more of the beers, the bourbons, the heavier, alcohol, sugar, right?
Right.
And so obesity to a certain level. So I think the education is really, these kids are taking it upon themselves to learn how to do things better. They all like to work out a fair amount. Because again, part of it's how they look and how they act, and they want to be healthy. That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
The GLPs, there's research going on with both Novo Nordisk, and Lilly. I know that through both of our customers around alcohol, drug dependencies, right? So if you take the GLP-1 and you got a heroin issue, does it tell your brain don't take my heroin, right? So that would be monumental if that were to be proven out through a clinical, even if it was proven out in 30% of people, right? 20% of people.
That would
So,
be incredible.
and
Truly.
even in alcohol, if it just says, okay, you can still, my brain says I can still drink, but my body says I'm full, or just like food, right? At 3 drinks, I'm kind of feeling like that's enough instead of 6.
Yeah, that would be really, really something if the application could help with curbing cravings around illicit substances. Yeah.
Anything. And they're both working on clinicals there, right? So this is all public information. They both have clinical trials going on there. And the reason they have clinicals, because they have to go through a clinical process to prove this new therapy indication. But they also know in current indications, by talking to patients on GLP-1s, that they're already starting to not drink as much as well as not eat as much, right? So naturally, that's why they're losing weight as well.
Yeah. Greg, if somebody's listening to the podcast and wants to join this coalition that you have, or if they want to get more information about your services, how would they find out more about you, more about your firm?
Yeah, the easiest is go to NNIT Inc.'s website, and there's multiple places there you can ask for information. Or don't be afraid to send me. I'm the U.S. SVP and CEO. My email address is GR, which is the first 2 letters of my first name, CA, which is the first 2 letters of my second name, or my surname, at NNIT.com. We love entertaining and talking to folks, and never turn anyone away for a conversation. So if they've got anything they want to talk about, don't be afraid. We've got 2,000 people globally, and generally 99% of our effort is around the supply chain and of the drug, the manufacturers, the wholesalers, and the like. So don't be afraid to ask questions, is what we always say.
Greg, this has been really enlightening. I really appreciate your time, and thank you again for being a guest.
Thanks, Alex. Enjoy the weekend coming up here too.
Yeah, you too.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?